Good morning, everyone. This is the Grim Retails. I'm on my way to work, and it's a balmy winter's morning. The snowfall we got a couple of days ago didn't last very long, so oh well, so much for this peppermint winter. It's going to be 58 degrees tonight, and tomorrow it's going to be, well, it's supposed to be in, steady, the 40s, 30s, 20s. But I don't know. This big northern apocalyptic winter that we were promised once again did not show up. I mean, I guess you could say that we are facing another kind of apocalypse, so maybe not the nuclear winter I was hoping for, but oh well, what are you gonna do? So the last few weeks I've been making content in reaction to some of the stuff that has been happening with a person named Andrew Ditch. And if you don't know who that is, Andrew Ditch is a man in his late 30s, about to be 40, who claims to be autistic. He also claims to have Tourette's syndrome, diabetes, and let's face it, he collects diagnoses and symptoms like they're ingredients at the Pinkberry. And yes, of course, you could clap back with, well, autism is a spectrum. Yes, autism is a spectrum. That doesn't mean that we get to pick and choose what symptoms affect us at different times. Usually by the time you're confident enough to say you have autism, or by the time you have a diagnosis, whether it's official or self-diagnosed, you have already experienced so many of the symptoms that you can't deny them being there. But we don't get to pick which ones we have after the fact, which is pretty much what Andrew Ditch has done. And every professional he has seen so far, he has literally recorded people. Because he records every interaction he has at the hospital. There's body cam footage of him being arrested at hospitals and at group homes. There is a ton of evidence posted online by Andrew, by the way. So not like people are just making stuff up, but Andrew Ditch has posted literal content of him seeing these professionals who have told him that he does not have the diagnosis. He has not shown any real official paperwork. Mostly he's just written paragraph after paragraph of medical, professional sounding dialogue or content that proves his diagnosis. And at the end of the day, he is only claiming to be autistic because he wants to be taken care of. And it really is an insult to the rest of the autistic community. It's disrespectful to those of us who have struggled all of our lives with no help at all, but still managed to be semi-functional. And he doesn't even want to wipe his own bottom. And look, I don't knock anybody for their physical limitations. People who need genuine assistance with any sort of personal care, I have the utmost respect for them, and I have respect for the people who undertake that work. I work in a place where people need that kind of help. And these are people who would not be that helpless if they could help it. But Andrew chooses to be this way. And the thing is, if he were to meet somebody who was eager to change his diaper and wipe his bottom and shower him and take care of him in all the ways he wants to be taken care of, I guarantee you he would turn it down, because he doesn't want somebody willingly helping him. He wants to be able to manipulate people into taking care of him. For him, that's what it's about. It's all about manipulation. So if you're looking for any kind of logic here, there's none to be found. The only logical explanation with him is that he gets some kind of sick, twisted pleasure out of making people tend to him. And yes, he probably does have some developmental delays. I do also gather from a lot of his content that his parents were both emotionally and physically abused by their parents. And his parents are very much probably like the kind, his parents are probably the kind of people who said, I will never treat my kids the way I was treated. And for their compassion, they did seem to turn out one decent son, Joe. Joe, for all intents and purposes, is the child they deserve, who does what he can to try to help out around the house and help his parents, but it doesn't help that he has this enormous man baby of a brother trying to take away all the attention and trying to monopolize, basically terrorize this family. And I do believe that his mother overcompensated early on. She probably did have to take care of him a little bit later. Like, look, lots of kids toilet train late. There are a lot of children who at the age of 7 or 8 might still need help wiping their bottoms. It happens, you know. You just do it and you move on, and eventually things work themselves out. And so his mother did the best she could with Andrew, you know, and he probably did have some developmental delays. They were probably legitimate. But I do think there must have been some overcompensation on her part. It probably went on a little longer than necessary. He probably picked up on it early on, and because he is so narcissistic, and because there's no age limit for narcissism, I mean, he probably learned to take, like, I wonder if she ever said no to him. Like, I wonder at what point because apparently his mother is a nurse, and generally the goal of nurses is to get every patient and every client to their highest level of functioning and to keep them there. And it's got to be hard to be objective when you have the whole skill set of a nurse, but you have the mentality of a mother who does not want to be psychologically and physically abusive the way your parents were. And so having a child where you can take care of that child in all the ways that you were not taken care of, I can't help but think that his mother was a bit, probably unintentionally, enabling of his behavior. And, you know, of course we got his father, you know, and let's face it, when boys are abused by their parents and by their families, there was one, you know, even nowadays, there's still this prevailing mentality that boys cannot be the victims, men cannot be the victims, men can't be victims of assault, they can't be victims of abuse. And his dad, little bits and pieces of Andy's videos and of his dad talking about his childhood make me think that he was psychologically and physically abused. And again, here's a guy who probably had enough wherewithal to say, I don't want to do this to my kids and I don't want to do this to my wife. And so he probably played along with his wife. You know, I mean, as long as she was the one changing Andy's diaper, he didn't have a horse in the race. But I would imagine that as Andy got older, his dad started losing patience with that behavior. And even at that point, he couldn't really do anything because, you know, there was a point not too long ago where Andy called the police on his parents and his dad got sent to jail. And I don't know all the details behind that, but all I know is his dad is still rightfully bitter over that. And now Andy allegedly is in a group home in Philadelphia. He's even posted on his community tab the alleged address and the alleged phone number of the place where he's receiving care. All of that information could be available online, by the way. And I did check Google Street View for the address he posted, and it does look like a regular house. Now, if he is in a group home situation, it's very likely that it could be that home is a support home kind of structure where the family who owns the house gets a stipend to take care of people who are developmentally disabled. So sort of like a foster home for adults. I actually have a friend who lives in a situation like that, although that friend is a little bit more self-sufficient than Andy. And I won't go into a lot of detail, but my point is that could be the situation. And if you try to call that phone number, even if he is one of their clients, they won't be able to tell you anything. So, and I think Andy probably knows this, which is why he's probably baiting people into calling this number, so that way he can get tons of evidence that people are harassing him. So if you go to his community tab to try to fish for that information, just don't do it. It's not worth it. Trolls eventually wither away and die if you stop feeding them. And I want to go on record as saying I'm not saying that I want anything to happen to him. I'm just saying metaphorically, trolls go away if you stop feeding them. And eventually he's going to try to yell at or manipulate the wrong person, and it's going to end badly for him. Probably not in any way that's going to teach him a lesson or anything, but badly nonetheless. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about what offends me personally as an autistic person, at least in regards to Andrew Ditch's behavior. Now, let me just get this out of the way. I'm not here to tone police anyone. I'm not here to tell anybody what words and terms they are and are not allowed to use. I am just giving you my perspective. And all right, first place, the term Asperger syndrome, it's outdated. It's no longer a part of the DSM-V. I've heard that word coming up a few times, and Andrew has gone on record as saying, oh, people who say they have Asperger's are just faking autism. No, Andrew, that actually was the diagnosis in the 90s, because back in the 1940s, when Hans Asperger worked with autistic children, he noticed that some of those children had a quote-unquote higher level of functioning than the children with more severe symptoms. And it was actually Hans Asperger that coined the terms high functioning and low functioning, because he used those terms to determine which of the children he saw could be sent to the factories and which ones could be sent to the gas chambers. Yes, Hans Asperger was a Nazi. He worked in a home for autistic boys, and he also evaluated other children with other kinds of disabilities, and he sent many children to their death. And the children who could still work in a factory, who could still be used as labor, exploited for labor, those children were labeled high functioning. And that is also why, in addition to Asperger's itself being an outdated term, the general autism community does not appreciate terms like high functioning and low functioning, because of not only the historical connotation, but the fact that high functioning doesn't really describe what a person needs. Like, okay, for all intents and purposes, I might be considered high functioning autistic, because although I do have autism, although I do have a hard time with eye contact, I do have meltdowns when certain situations occur. I can get overwhelmed, and I do experience a lot of the symptoms. However, I am able to function. I have a job. I pay rent. I pay bills. I'm able to manage my finances. I don't need a job coach. There's a lot of things I don't need, that if you were to evaluate me, if a real professional were to evaluate me, they would probably say, oh, high functioning autism. And actually, a funny thing is that I have seen professionals in the past 20 years or so who have met me and said, oh, you can't be autistic because you don't have all the symptoms of somebody with severe autism. Basically, they said I don't look autistic. And so I've done such a great job of masking a lot of my more severe symptoms that I pulled off being a functional human being. But my point being is that the term high functioning doesn't eliminate all the things I need help with. Now, I've managed to survive pretty well as an adult, but there were definitely times when I could have used some kind of assistance or some kind of support. And that is why the preferable term in my case is low support needs. So I don't need as many support needs as somebody like, all right, I hate to use him as an example. I don't need the kind of support needs. I don't need the kind of support that Andy claims to need, but I do need support. And in that way, I am low support needs. Now, somebody with higher support needs is somebody like, now I've described this person before. This was a person I knew. I lived in Burlington, Vermont. He used to work at the Rite Aid where I worked. He was autistic as well. Now, I had met his mother a year or so earlier, and his mother worked at a laundromat, and it was the laundromat that I frequented, so that's how I got to know her and got to know him by proxy. He could hold down a job, but he just needed a job coach. So he needed somebody to kind of stay with him while he was at work. And they didn't have to hover over him, but they just had to make sure that, you know, they had ways of calming him down when some of his characteristics came to the forefront. If there was any change to his routine, he would say things at random. Like, there was one day I remember him repeatedly saying bearded fart, and I want to listen to some radio station, and he would say like Metallica over and over again. So he would start doing this repetitive dialogue every hour or so, and that was because his normal coach wasn't there, and the new coach, the coach that was subbing, was getting in his face and kind of bothering him. So he was verbalizing his, you know, it was the only way he knew how to verbalize his upset, his distress, but he was still doing what he was supposed to do. He was stocking the shelves. He could read the labels. He could, like, he was always there on the truck days. And so this was somebody who needed assistance. And when he was a child, like when he was 11 years old, he was still in training pants. He actually did need help with toileting, and he was so severe that his mother was trying to find support for him, and she actually got in touch with this school in, I can't remember exactly where it was. I think it was North Carolina, but it was this school that specialized in children with autism. And because of his case, they actually helped her for free. They actually helped his mom for free. And when he had spent a summer there, like he'd only spent a couple months there, and when he was back, he was fully toilet trained, and he went on to, graduate from high school. He did all the stuff he had to do to get through school, and he has his diploma and everything. And so, but he is still high support needs. This is still an autistic person who cannot fully live on his own. He can't fully, he doesn't have the capacity to live in the general world without some kind of supervision. But so even though he has high support needs, he is still a functioning individual. And that's why terms like high and low functioning don't really help in this case, because they don't describe a person's actual needs or abilities. They're just terms. They're throwaway terms. They're labels to stick on somebody to say, yep, he's high functioning, he can go to work. He's low functioning, he doesn't have to have a job. And people like Andrew and people like Autism Speaks weaponize those terms to make people with autism seem less like functioning members of society and more like people who should be put away in a home somewhere out in the country, preferably with no cameras and no security. It's insulting. It is demeaning. And the way he behaves, it puts a bad light on the autistic community. And that is why the autistic community won't accept him. Even other deviants like Nova Online don't want anything to do with Andrew Ditch. What does that tell you? So yeah, I just wanted to let that out. And I did want to answer a question. Mr. Beefy asked this in one of his videos. I can't remember which video and I can't find the clip, but because at one point Andrew had said something. Well, all right, so one of the ways that Andrew Ditch presents himself in his videos is that he will sometimes do baby talk. He'll refer to himself in the first person or the third person. He'll present all these little quirks, and one minute it is switched on and the intensity is high and the baby talk is constant, and then when he's talking about something like computers, the baby talk goes away. The baby talk, the childish voice, the referring to himself in the third person. Like I said, he picks whatever symptoms suit him at the time and whichever symptoms complement his performance. And so Mr. Beefy had asked at one point, can people go from, and again, this is where I come in with saying I'm not tone policing, because Mr. Beefy is only using terms that Andy is using. And I know I don't. So Mr. Beefy asked, can people go from high functioning to low functioning? Can their symptoms come and go the way Andy does? And I will say that, as I said earlier, I am very good at masking a lot of autistic people, and I'm sure there are people with schizophrenia and ADHD who are capable of masking their symptoms. After a while, you get really good at knowing how to suppress some things, which is not a good thing, not necessarily, but some people are able to mask symptoms well enough to function in society or to get along. I might be able to squash my anxiety long enough to, like, I can suppress my need for everything to be orderly when I go to work, because anybody who has ever worked anywhere knows that your coworkers half the time don't know what's going on. You go through this training module, you read these books, you sign these papers, and you go through this orientation that tells you this is why you don't do this, and then you start working and your coworkers are doing just that, the thing they were told they're not supposed to do. And as somebody with autism, as somebody who values routine and who values the structure that rules provide, when I walk into a situation and I see somebody not following the rules that I have been told that I have to follow, not following guidelines, not doing everything the way they're supposed to, it can set me off for the entire day. And there are times I'm able to get a rein on that. There are times when I'm able to prepare myself for that just well enough that I can at least get through the day, but that doesn't mean it doesn't affect me. So to answer Mr. Beefy's question, generally no. If something is bothersome enough to be considered a symptom, if it's a trait that is prominent enough that it is part of the diagnostic model, then no, it doesn't just go away. It doesn't just go from severe to lesser, but people can train themselves to work through it, if that makes sense. That's the best way I can answer that. So yeah, I just wanted to respond to that. I was going to post a clip. I was going to post a lot of clips, but people all over YouTube are using those clips and those videos, and so I don't think I can really add anything to that. Although I have been making some cute little shorts, so I hope everybody checks those out. Anyway, on that note, I'm almost at work. So thank you for joining me this morning on my walk to work and for listening to me rant about Andy and his disparaging remarks about and his disparaging behavior that offends people in the autistic community. Have a great day, be safe, treat each other with dignity and respect.